Yeah, you're getting some highs here and highs on Zoom. You know, this is the new normal, right?
Yeah, new normal.
So, great. Can we go back to the PPT now? Sorry for the extra minutes to get started, but we are here. So, thank you. You know, it's always tough to go after lunch. Really tough. So hopefully we'll make it exciting enough for you so that we don't go to sleep. There's some chai coffee also, you know, to keep you occupied. But here we are to really discuss how student recruitment is going to look in a post-COVID world. You know, 18 months, and we have 3 presenters. I'm here in the room with you. Oh, sorry. Okay, this is. I'm Swaraj Nandan. I'm the co-founder, director of IC Universist. We work with 300 odd universities around the world and help them with their global engagement. Sarah, Chris, can we have you introduce yourself? So can we pin them so that they can introduce themselves, and then we'll come back to the.
Start with Sarah first.
Yeah, Sarah.
Hi everyone, Swaraj Nandan. I'm the Director of International Admissions at Florida International University.
Hi everybody, my name is Chris Coupland. I'm the Executive Director of Undergraduate Admission and Recruitment at Queen's University.
Fantastic. Thanks guys, and again, really appreciate you getting up early in the morning to be with us here in Delhi. So what did... can we go back to the PPT, please? What did our lives as recruiters look before we got here, right? All those precious times with the students in person. No social distancing, right? That personal interaction, which is why a lot of us are in the field, you know, to be and to help and to guide. No masks. And it's important. You know, yesterday someone told me, I can see your cheekbones, but what I miss is the smile. And that interaction with students where you see the twinkle in their eye and you're like, oh, you know, this student is going to apply. You know that as recruiters. We are missing that right now. The shaking of hands, you know, not having to think about shaking hands or fist pumping or any of that. And of course, for many of you, airline lounges, right? It was funny, just 4 days ago, I filled up forms, you know, while coming from the US, and I had to say how many countries I had been in the last 5 years. Obviously, none of us have traveled in the last 18 months, but guess what? I've traveled to 18 countries in the last 5 years, right? And I was like, holy moly, you know, in almost 3 years, I was in so many countries. We were traveling without a worry or a whim, and we are now in a new world. You know, many of those things are going to change. We're spending so much time on online virtual platforms. 3 and 4 a.m. wake-ups for many of our colleagues in the US, in Europe. You know, you are attending, speaking with students. Kudos, by the way, to the entire community. You know, we've been very resilient. We've done everything that it takes, and you know, just so that the students don't suffer. But you know, there have been challenges, student visa issues, student travel issues, and we have tried to work through all of those. So before we really dive into what university, because we're going to hear from Chris and Sarah about how their universities are looking at it, what are the changes they are making, we just thought that we'll poll you. We'll just poll everyone out here and see, you know, what are you thinking? Where do you think international recruitment is headed? So if you can pull up menti.com, menti.com on your phones and vote. There's a code out here. The code is 34939868. I hope on Zoom you can see that on the slide. It is 34939868. Once you log in, you will get to see this question, and you'll be able to vote, and we'll see the live polls Or what are you thinking? When will your institution start traveling again for student recruitment? So here are the votes coming in. This is exciting, right? This is like the election thing. You know, who's leading? Okay, we're starting to see some trends here. Interesting, right? We see spring 22, that's where people are at, but interestingly, you're also seeing a quarter of you are saying that this fall, which is here, we're in August, right? September onwards, you are open to travel. Well, given the number of people we have seen here in Delhi, I am not surprised that we are thinking and we are starting to become comfortable in traveling again. Would this be the full-fledged travel? Don't know. So again, we'll get deeper into that discussion. But can we go to the next question? So on the same, they don't need to make any changes. They will be able to see, right? The question will change in your app, and you should be able to see the next question there. The code remains the same. You will see the next question. How will your institution conduct international student recruitment over the next 2 years? Will it be virtual only? Will it be predominantly virtual? Will it be, equal split, virtual and physical? Will be higher importance to in-person recruitment? Or you're just going to go with the flow and, we'll figure it out. So we're going to see, are you seeing the question? Yeah? Okay. Oh, there it starts to come in. Early results. Right? Early results show that, wow, look at this. We would have thought that with the last 18 months, all of us being so much on virtual, would be heavy on the virtual side. But I can see people are raring to get on the road because we are seeing equal importance to physical and virtual or higher importance. There are also 32% of you who are saying that you'll just go with the flow and figure it out as it goes, and I can completely understand. Over the last 3 months, 3 months ago, I was speaking with some friends in Indonesia and Thailand, and things look really great. They had not been impacted over the last 12 months, and they were very happy about that. But things changed dramatically in Indonesia. Indonesia, things got worse than India in the last 3 months. They lost their frontline doctors because they were vaccinated, not using using a particular vaccine that didn't hold up against the virus variant. But I think that's what we're going to see. We're going to see probably equal importance to physical and virtual, and also something of go with the flow. Can we have the next one, please?
Here we go.
How will your institution conduct domestic student recruitment over the next 2 years? So some split between domestic and international. If you are involved with domestic recruitment, are you going to be virtual, predominantly virtual, or physical, if it's domestic recruitment? Because there are implications, right? From an international travel standpoint, there are many restrictions right now. So from a quarantining standpoint, we used to travel to Southeast Asia. You spend a night in Ho Chi Minh City, a night in Hanoi, and then you fly to Taiwan. And then you spend 2 days in Taiwan, you go to Malaysia, spend 2 days, Kuala Lumpur, and then go to Indonesia, 2 days. Gone are those days, right? Now with inter-country quarantining, taking RT-PCRs, uploading them into country systems, making sure you have all the documentation, that's not going to be how it looks. So domestic recruitment looks like 77% of you are saying, probably trending towards physical. and that's a good sign. That shows that there's confidence coming back in travel, at least domestically. Let's go to the next one. And it's the same question, but really, especially from an international standpoint. So international student travel, recruitment, do you think, from an importance standpoint, will it continue to remain as important as it was for you? Is it still very important, somewhat important, same as pre-COVID, somewhat less important, and not important at all? So let's look at international student recruitment. How important are you really visualizing it from your perspective, from your institutional perspective? Let's see the results start to come in. If you're voting, refresh, I guess. Yeah. Oh. Okay, our roles are not going anywhere. That's the good news, right? So it looks like 60 odd percent, well, almost 30% are saying it's the same as pre-COVID, and that's also a good sign. And then about 60% are saying very important. Actually, I'm not surprised. And the reason is the fact that you're at this conference suggests that your institution is already, looking at international student recruitment. They're committed to international student recruitment. That's why we're here. Can we switch back to the main presentation, please? Thank you for doing this. Thank you for participating in the polls. Hearing you is the best way for us to keep a tab. I think 2 years ago I had shown this chart in terms of, this is a report that had come, if I remember, this was PwC analysis, and the fact of how the economies are going to move from 2016 to 2050. This is very important for us to know how the economies are growing, where are we going to focus on, right? Because those economic pieces are what's going to drive growth, affluence, openness to travel abroad for education, right? So if you see, India was going up, Indonesia was going up, Brazil was pretty high, and given this, I wanted to see, with the countries that are going to emerge as the new economies, what's happening there from a COVID standpoint, right? So we took from Worldometers, we really took what's the weekly case change, because as you are determining where to go from a travel standpoint, those are the countries of focus that you're going to look at from an international travel standpoint. So the China, India, US, Indonesia, Brazil, the good news was China, US, and this is, sorry, don't look at this, look at this. So that's China, India, US. So US, you have seen recently there has been a certain spike, but China and India, great news, right? The numbers have been down. Thankfully, the IC3 conference was able to happen because of that. Indonesia, the numbers are going down. That's a good sign. So really, at the top half, if you see, from a recruitment standpoint, this is good news for us. That from a numbers, and again, this is just a weekly trend. I'm sure we're going to need to look at wider trends, maybe over a monthly basis. But what's going to happen is, as we look at defining our recruitment travels, this is the kind of analysis that we'll have to do. And so take it down from a country level standpoint to a city level standpoint. How are cities doing? Like even in India, Kerala is not doing as well as Delhi or Mumbai are right now. So it's a great time to be in Mumbai because the number of cases are down. We don't know what's going to happen in 2 months. And that's what is going to happen with travel, right? It's going to be last minute. You may not be able to book your tickets a month and a half in advance. Probably buy fully refundable tickets, right? Book those hotels that can be cancelled 24 hours in advance. So some of those things are going to change. In the interest of time, I'm just going to run, actually I'm already very late, so I'm just going to keep it very high level. We conducted some student surveys. We'll be happy to share the results with you. But essentially, they're continuing to think about going to the same places, study destinations that they were planning to before COVID. Most of them are. 87% of them plan to apply to the same number or more, because now with virtual, they have been exposed to more destination countries. So their consideration set has expanded. They are going to, I'm not going to get into the details, but essentially they're going to multi-university events. If you're just holding your own university event, there's a lesser chance that they're going to come. So try to tag team with other universities, or if there are other fairs that are happening, that's going to be higher, impact. More students are attracted to that. In terms of interaction preference, they prefer the university to be on video, but for them to be on chat. So if they are not coming on video, with you, don't feel offended. It's just that's their preference, right? These are the factors that they attract them to the fairs. So make sure that the materials that you're sharing with them in terms of brochures, the conversations that are happening, you are addressing scholarships, you're addressing program choices, you're addressing rankings, right? That's the kind of information that they're looking for. Emails and counselors, high school counselors are the predominant sources of information, right? To learn about their virtual events. So look at that. Also, they're not going to spend more than an hour at the event. So that's again something that you need to keep in mind. If they come, they're going to meet 7, 8 universities in an hour. But that's about it. If you're at a 3-hour event and it starts, thinning out at the end, that's the way it is, right? Because they're not going to stay there for 2 hours. So focus on bigger countries. Less air travel within those countries. There's probably going to be more road travel. School visits will become harder to plan, just with everything moving, go with the flow. You will have to spend more time in a school. One of those times when you have hundreds of students, right? The school will probably need to bring them out in batches of 50, 25, right? So you will need to spend more time at the school. And then also longer time to be spent in a country. If you're going to a country, try to go to countries where you're going to be able to spend a week, 10 days. Also, you will potentially only look at countries with good healthcare facilities, right? For obvious reasons. So things are going to change. But I'd really like to bring in my colleagues. So if we can go to Zoom, please. And if we can.
Should we get Sarah?
Sarah, please. Oh, this is Chris. Actually, can we go to let me switch to Sarah's slide, Chris.
All right.
I can't see the presentation.
I think one more slide. Perfect. So Chris will talk a little bit more, so I won't steal too much of his thunder on some of the virtual recruitment that he's doing, and we certainly have adopted quite a few of those same initiatives at Florida International University, so things like webinars, Instagram Lives, calendars, and we have not engaged faculty quite as much as they have, but again, I'll let him talk a little bit more about what he's specifically doing. But we also adopted a lot of small group travel, like Swaraj was mentioning. So it's small group virtual travel, let's say. So we reached out to high schools and Education USA to focus on developing interesting and catchy virtual presentations that, with a core group of distinct institutions, to try to, of course, engage the students virtually. But before we go much further, I'd like to give you some context for the current environment at FIU, so you can have a sense for how it has shaped much of our thinking and the strategies we've employed. First, the good news, our international numbers have rebounded back, just past our fall 2019 numbers, and we are well beyond our fall 2018 numbers in really every student type, ranging from first-time and college students, transfer undergrads, and both masters and PhDs. But we do continue to struggle in recruiting new first-time and college students, and that is really due to the fact that FIU significantly raised the GPA and SAT requirements for incoming fall cohorts. But despite all of that, we are certainly incredibly proud of the work that we've done to turn things around despite the significant upward climb that we're all experiencing. Due to the Florida governor's executive order, we are unable currently in our classrooms to require masking, completion of health checks for vaccines. We are, of course, strongly encouraging this to happen, and there are also discussions about incentivizing vaccines through book grants or other monetary awards to try to encourage that behavior. And we've also returned all operations to pre-pandemic levels. So there's no physical distancing in our classrooms, no remote options for a hybrid type of learning for those students that are uncomfortable returning to the classrooms. Those students that are uncomfortable are encouraged to take online-only classes. But of course, this is a challenge for our international students who, of course, can only do this if they wish to be fully online and remain in their home countries, since they can't take a full course load online. So we continue to process deferrals for future terms due to various pandemic-related disruptions. But whenever possible, we still do encourage enrollment in online degree programs. And we're certainly fortunate to have a large number of those programs available so students don't have to be forced to put their studies on hold while they manage immigration and travel issues. Now, for fall 2022, we are once again returning our GPA and SAT requirements to pre-pandemic levels. So we significantly lowered the requirements for fall 2021, given the limited test options. The state of Florida Board of Governors continues to mandate SAT and ACT scores for all incoming students, regardless of curriculum or international status for the Florida public universities. So this certainly puts us at a bit of a disadvantage when it comes to our colleagues. We anticipate our first time in college student numbers to decline again as a result of these changes. And back again to maybe our 2020 levels rather than our 2021 levels. And that's due to the sensitivity we see in our international enrollments when we even slightly increase the SAT or the ACT test scores. So what we've done to really combat this is to adopt new and innovative pathways to address these kind of issues. So we've had a long-standing bridge program, which is local first year since 2015, and that is for students who seek greater support for their transition to FIU and cannot actually take the SAT or ACT. This program starts students with non-degree and upon successful completion transitions them into the second year at FIU. And for me, that's good because I get to count them as my transferring student numbers rather than my first time in college numbers. We've previously piloted a program we're calling iJumpstart, and we're hoping to launch a new program called iStep. Both are for international first-time students. 1 or 2 semesters they will take online in coursework before coming to FIU to continue as full-time degree-seeking students on an I-20. And both of these programs are aimed at ensuring students are meeting calculus readiness requirements for more math-intensive programs and allowing students to enroll in classes during their preferred term of entry without negatively impacting the fall cohort metrics, which of course are important for rankings. We've also started to rethink not only how we recruit, but also our physical presence in many countries. So we undertook a complete planning process, Growing Learners 2025 Strategic Plan and Global Strategy. And this plan rethinks how we engage all of our learners, not just traditional university students. This includes high school students, visiting international students through partnerships, micro badges, micro credentials, and other non-credit study. The goal here is to expand our international outreach, build affinity and name recognition through these collaborative efforts with local universities and local industries. And these efforts use our already established FIU online platform and our significant global footprint as we start to think about identifying these global centers. And these centers are very similar to the University of Arizona's micro-campus partner location model, but the idea is to meet students where they are in collaboration with trusted partners to, again, kind of rethink how we are managing the recruitment in a very uncertain terms. We are certainly not stopping our traditional recruitment efforts aimed at traditional students. But those are also changing as well as we build out more options for articulation agreements, both for transfer students and graduate students. We're also working diligently to expand our reach into sponsoring organizations for international students and have developed a type of international concierge. And of course, that's because those international sponsoring agencies require a lot of additional work on our end. And these efforts are really more, require much more funding support and many more meetings. That's definitely the next months of my life is to try to figure out how to make these things work. And while many universities have used the pandemic to think about how to recruit in a virtual environment, and of course we did this too, we began to also think about how to create a more resilient approach to student engagement across the board. And this has made us truly shift all of our recruitment strategies. This is partially due to our size, the number of students we already have and already attract through name recognition, faculty expertise, and location. It would likely be a very different conversation for an institution that is not similarly positioned as FIU or has more niche programs. And that isn't to say that these kind of expanded pathways into the institution and rethinking modalities and international collaboration and cooperation can't work for others. Absolutely, it certainly can. However, these require significantly more time and effort to build, explain, and advise students through these pathways and partnerships. Often folks, of course, administration-wise are looking for faster solutions to build international enrollment. So institutions, of course, look to things like increasing agency partnerships and building a much larger inquiry and prospect channels through various platforms. We, of course, are going to do that too. We haven't really engaged some of these like larger marketing or high school platforms that exist. But we are looking into them as a way to be more targeted in our efforts, especially in our outreach and meeting students that are within the criteria for disability. These efforts, of course, are also certainly important and can be equally time-consuming, as these pathways and rethinking modalities are as well. But these pathway options, we think, may pay off in the long term through sustained student enrollment through a variety of things that may come up in the future that we haven't even really thought about. And as we did the poll, FIU also will be traveling, hopefully this fall, to locations and regions that allow. And currently on our radar for those options are Latin America, the Caribbean, and the Middle East. Of course, Latin America and the Caribbean are close to us, so that poses less of an issue. Our travel authorization process requires us to clearly justify the reason why we must travel to these countries, especially those that the Department of State and the CDC have listed as risk level 3 or 4. We've pretty much been told that risk level 4 is kind of a no-go. You have to have a really good reason to go there, but that's not, but they haven't said absolutely no. And those that are a risk level 1 or 2 will likely be approved without too much difficulty. So our travel authorization process already does include enrollment into travel, insurance, and support for emergencies. And we also, of course, will not require anyone to travel if they're uncomfortable or unwilling. But the university approach overall, as we've entered this stage of the pandemic, is we care about the health of our community, but truly the main way that you can protect yourself and protect others is a good mask, worn appropriately, and getting vaccinated. So if you choose to take all of those precautions, the university is willing to give us the opportunity to kind of get back to a new normal. And with that, I'll turn it on over to Chris to discuss more about what he's done virtually and his recruitment efforts. Thank you.
Chris, just give me 1 second. I'm just getting to your slides.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, thanks Sarah for your overview of what you're doing at your area. Sarah covered a lot of the strategic approach at FIU, and I think that was really helpful. I'm going to dig a bit more into specific tactics and what we've done. First of all, let me say hello from Kingston, Ontario, Canada, at Queen's University, where we are located on the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe, and it's I'm grateful to be able to live, work, and play on these lands. Just as a bit of context, Queen's University is a medium-sized university in Canada. Our intake is just under 5,000 students per year, so that gives you a sense of just the type of volume that we see. And we're now just starting to welcome students, staff, and faculty back to our campus. We do have vaccine mandates for anybody that's going to be on campus. I just had to complete an app saying why I was on campus and go through the whole checklist. And the masks will be required indoors and in common areas. So, I think this really highlights that what we're seeing right now and what I expect to see in the near future is a very regional approach based on regional sort of risk assessments and sort of expectations in terms of how we address COVID and what our local populations expect from us. Early in summer 2020, so this time last year, we knew that recruitment would look very different. Before COVID, we would typically attend about 1,200 events per year, such as individual school visits and fairs and other activities. We would typically work collaboratively with a lot of our colleagues across Ontario to do recruitment in Ontario, with fellow colleagues in Canada to do recruitment across Canada, and then partner with other institutions to travel internationally. As we reviewed our activities last year, we knew that we couldn't simply take what we did and flip it to an online model. That would not be sufficient, and to flip it into a virtual format. So to use an old and maybe a tired adage, we had to definitely think outside the box and adapt if we wanted to reach our incoming class, and also to reach guidance counselors and the adults in their lives. I'm sure many of you ask yourselves the same questions over that same period of time, over the same time period. I'm a recruiter by training, and for me as a representative of my institution, I really think of myself as a generalist. And I was always wished I could bring the experts from our institution and from various faculties and departments on the road with me so that they can go into much more greater depth about what their program offers and to speak about the services that we have on campus. And what this year really afforded us was the opportunity to do just that. We were able to have experts right there where sharing us their information and stories with prospective students and other audiences. We saw far more current student involvement in recruitment than ever before. And we saw registration and participation numbers spike when prospective students knew that our faculty members and our students were involved in our activities, our outreach activities. Our campus tour guides played a massive role in terms of what we delivered and being able to moderate and facilitate a lot of those discussions. I remember being at IC3 a few years ago and often sitting in on sessions about how to make your recruitment more novel, more engaging, and really to be able to showcase what your institution has to offer. And a lot of those discussions would often focus on how to provide prospective students more access to your campus and more engagement with current students, faculty, and staff. And I would always leave those sessions thinking to myself, like, that's a great idea, but how do you do it? How do you actually implement and execute that? And how do you do it at scale? And really what we were forced to do was to work out the executional details in the last year, and we were able to accomplish just that. We had great support from our colleagues across the university. Many of us were pushed outside of our comfort zones. I remember seeing a colleague of mine 6 months away from retirement in an Instagram live session, and that showed me what we were capable of and resulted in the highest number of applications we ever saw. So what did we do and how did we adapt? Here, obviously, we have a list of different items, activities. I'm sure many of you are familiar with all.
Hey, Chris, should I be changing the slide? Can you just give me a thing to when to change slides?
Yeah, I definitely will. We're not there yet. Coming soon, though.
Okay.
The tactics that we use are familiar to all of you. It's not like they're necessarily novel in what we did. But what we did do, and I think what we'll continue to do, is we listened to our audiences, we adapted the material to the specific channels and platforms, and we really met students where they were. And I think that's a theme that you heard from Sarah in terms of reaching non-traditional students, and really thinking about our audiences and what was the information that they needed, what was the platform that they were accessing it, and how do we optimize that information for that platform. One of the first places or audiences we started was guidance counselors. This group is fortunate. We have a very strong relationship with them, and we're grateful for the work that they do. But not being able to see them in schools was a major detriment. And we're regularly participate in large counselor events with our colleagues across the province of Ontario. A lot of that was moved online, like what many of us were used to, but we also added our own individual webinars for guidance counselors right around some key important deadline dates. We saw a great turnout from those events. Individually, we had 250 local provincial guidance counselors attend some of those events. We hosted one for out of province and international students, tailoring the information specifically to their needs. We also recognized that we had to up our game in terms of our guidance counselor newsletters, and we were starting to see a lot more traction in terms of the guidance counselor section on our website, which we had neglected over the past few years. So really this required us to think about what channels are they using to access that information and really keep it current and updated. As I mentioned, many of the recruitment activities that we didn't just want to take them from in-person to virtual. And one thing that we knew that students would miss would be the one-to-one interaction and application advising, and that's where Calendly came into play massively for us. That allowed prospective students to be able to book one-on-one sessions with tour guides about their academic programs that they're interested in, or our admission advisors and admission coordinators to talk about the specifics of their application, to set up those one-on-one meetings and have those sessions with parents and students. While I think at the beginning many of us were uncomfortable maybe with having sort of virtual conversations, the level of engagement was really heartwarming to see, and it made us much more available than ever before, and it didn't require maybe a student or family having to drive to the university to be able to have that conversation. We often met on Teams and Zooms, and the feedback we received from students and families was that the opportunity to connect meant a lot to them. One of the early most impactful projects that we took on was really developing a lot of our presentation material and putting it into webinars. And we hosted a series throughout the year, and really what we did was we tried to start from general topics in the fall, and then we progressively narrowed down throughout the admission cycle to make it more tailored to specific student needs and specific topics and themes based on where we were in the admission cycle. We tried to train our audiences in the type of information they would get and when they would get it. So Tuesdays and Thursdays were typically general sessions, and then Wednesdays were reserved for themed presentations or turning it over to our faculty and campus partners to be able to deliver those sessions. At the beginning, Swaraj talked about the time commitment for those webinars, and we never scheduled anything beyond an hour. The formal part of the presentations we tried to keep really to about 15 minutes. And as the year went on, the formal part of the presentations actually get a lot smaller, just to sort of spark the conversation, get the engagement going. And the audience, the students, while they might not be comfortable raising a hand or asking a question directly, they are not afraid to use the chat functionality, and I think that's where we saw the greatest level of engagement. And that's something that I hope to see last far beyond the pandemic, is just the level of engagement and questions we got from our students was far greater through some of those webinar sessions than you might get at like an individual school presentation where people are maybe a bit more reluctant to stand up in front of their peers and ask some of those questions. Our tour guides acted as moderators in these events, and they were much more, I think, approachable than maybe some of the traditional older staff like myself. All of our sessions were recorded and later posted for students to be able to access the recorded versions. And we saw great sort of uptake in terms of reviewing those virtual sessions, which again is a great tool for students that are out of different time zones. In the new year, we really started to talk about the specifics of the application process, encouraging applicants to pay attention to the to-do list to meet their offer conditions. We monitored our main admission email account, as well as the questions we were seeing in our online webinars, to be able to adjust our session topics. We also paid attention to social media, Facebook, Instagram, as well as Reddit, and we adapted our events to reflect what we were hearing the applicants wanted to learn more about. And then we sort of repackaged those and offered them as new events and webinars. And we also looked to see if the events that didn't sort of do well as a webinar would do better as an Instagram Live, and we sort of adapt our sessions to those platforms and what sort of drove our numbers. Swaraj, do you mind moving to the next slide?
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So while all of this was happening, we leveraged our campus partners to support the virtual open houses, our Instagram Live sessions. We had many student panels on countless topics. Our faculty of engineering and applied science, worked with a student club that had developed and built a campus in Minecraft. We hosted an entire campus tour in Minecraft and had an Easter egg hunt and delivered information sessions. That was super popular. High engagement over an entire 2-hour online virtual session. So I think that just showed us that there are ways to be able to use technology to be able to offer something that wouldn't be possible in person. And that's what we were trying to do. Not think about what we lost, but think about the new tools that we have available and how we can leverage them in the absence of being able to do in-person tactics. This required a lot of our teams to be able to work late hours, meeting people in different time zones, getting up maybe earlier than what they wanted, like today. And our team members experienced all the joys of jet lag without leaving their house or getting the benefit of any air miles. So just on to the next slide. So what did we see? We saw average attendance rate across all our over 200 events was 63% of our registered attendees ended up showing up, and we had over 10,000 attendees over the course of those sessions. But what all these numbers and interactions with our applicants tell us is that we were doing the right things at the right time, and which is why we did more of it. And we were able to adapt what we were offering to reflect the applicants' needs. And the true strength of our collective efforts and our team was just the flexibility that we brought to our planning. So we created a framework in terms of what we wanted to do and when we wanted to do it, but it was not rigid. It adapted events where we saw participation rates, we did more of them. Events and activities that didn't have a benefit or had little uptake, we moved away from those. And we kept on listening to what our applicants and our sort of prospective students were telling us, and we tried to deliver that information and turn around as soon as possible. And that's where I think the feedback loop that we got in the online and virtual world allowed just so much more adaptability in what we did. Instead of sort of rethinking recruitment plans on a yearly basis, we were rethinking recruitment plans on a weekly basis. If you mind moving to the next slide?
Yeah, I just did. And Chris, just a reminder, we've just run out of time. So
okay.
Maybe we'll just extend by 5 minutes because I know we have the exhibit thing in 20 minutes. So, but we'll just continue for 5 more minutes.
Okay, so I don't think it's a virtual tour, and we added a lot of tours and sort of adapted our tour material, offering both guided and sort of self-directed tours as well as in-person self-directed tours. I think we can move on to the next slide and my final thoughts. So really, what does the road ahead look like? We anticipate we anticipate the recruitment cycle this year to look a lot like last year. We're hearing that from our peer institutions across the province. Most people are hopeful that they'll be able to do in-person some activities, but it's likely that we're going to be very much doing a lot of remote activities. I think a lot of this has to do with public health guidelines, vaccination mandates, infection rates, as well as travel restrictions. Our approach is going to be to continue to be flexible and adapt and leverage all the channels and platforms that we have available. I'm also curious to see how schools would respond to some of our survey results earlier. What's their willingness to be able to host us and do in-person activities going forward? My expectation is that that's going to decrease quite a bit. We do know there's a massive pent-up demand for in-person activities, but I think we're going to have to be willing to continue to be adaptable and flexible going forward. We saw great success with these tactics over the last year, so there's a huge appetite to do more of this. The challenge is going to be able to balance that work in conjunction with doing in-person pieces. All of that work required our entire teams working at home, delivering those virtual sessions. As more people move back to in-person travel, that's going to take away some of our resources to be able to deliver those virtual sessions. So that's going to be a huge challenge to work through. Anyhow, I will leave it at that and just thank you for your time, and I'm happy to hear what the feedback is and questions. Thank you.
We just thanks Chris for adjusting. We just have 2 minutes. Are there any burning questions? We'll of course continue to have these discussions over the next day, but if there are any quick thoughts anybody wants to share about recruitment, if you are looking at something that's way different than what we've been able to share. Thoughts, suggestions? Yes.
Is it possible to show the first feedback from the poll? We couldn't see it online, so there was a few questions about where people are traveling and that kind of thing.
We will try to go back to it, Sarah. And in the meantime, if there are any questions, people can unmute themselves and ask those questions. Or thoughts, suggestions. Is that the one?
Yes, hi, I'm Sheetal Joshi from CEU Universities in Spain, and I'm not sure if there are any counselors that are in the session, but I know a lot of us at the university were doing a lot of these virtual activities, and I wanted to get maybe some counselors' feedback on how they saw this, how they saw all of the impact of the virtual events. Did they get any different feedback from their students than maybe us at the university have?
Yeah, I see a couple of counselors in the room. Would you want to share your feedback, with the whole changes that have been happening with the virtual getting integrated? Anything that you would like to share? Anything in terms of the timing of when you think the universities, you would want to see universities back on campus? Any thoughts in the room? Yeah, just hang on.
Yes, so now that we've opened up the schools, we've opened up for students as well, and we are starting with, to be honest, the students are very much overwhelmed with the online sessions, attending the webinars, so it's not there out for every student. And now that the students are back in school, they have to manage their timings for the online sessions and the physical school as well. So we are very much open to invite universities, host virtual, university fairs in the schools, and we're looking forward for that.
Great. If you have them back on campus, would you like them to make any changes in the way they were coming? Initially they would come for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour and a half. Any changes the way you're thinking when they come in, they need to do something, provide you with an RDPC? I don't know, but have you thought through that process so that they can get some guidance in terms of the way to approach it in the next 6 months?
No, actually not really, because these, talking about COVID protocols is something they will go through when they enter the country or when they enter, the airport. That is something that they will have to go through.
Right.
So apart from that, when they interacting with the students. Yes, now what we are doing is we are inviting students in 2 slots. We are only, calling them in 50% capacity at one time.
Okay.
So that is something that will have to be managed.
So since you're inviting them in 2 cohorts, probably the amount of time that they would want to spend is a larger amount of time on campus.
Yes. So the timing would be more from there, and they will have to spend with us.
Great.
So yeah, that's about it.
Great. Thank you for that. That really helps. Anybody else? Okay. Anybody online would want to ask a question? Feel free to unmute yourself. Okay, great. Well, if there are no questions, we'll continue these discussions, out here at the venue and even online. Thank you so much for joining us. Please remember to share your feedback on the mobile app. And thanks again. Thanks again for joining this afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye from Delhi.